We often hear the phrase, "It's not the years in your life, but the life in your years." I used to think this was just a nice saying, something you might see on a greeting card or a motivational poster. It felt distant, like a truth that belonged to other people, to those who had already lived long, full lives and were looking back. My life was still ahead of me, a long, unmarked road stretching toward a horizon I couldn't yet see. I thought I had all the time in the world to figure out what that phrase really meant. I was busy building a life that looked right from the outside, following a map someone else had drawn for me. I was measuring my days in hours worked and bills paid, not in moments of real joy or connection. I was living for a future that I assumed would be there waiting for me. A future where I would finally have enough time, enough money, enough security to start truly living. I was saving up my adventures for someday. Someday I would travel. Someday I would learn a new skill. Someday I would spend more time with the people I loved. But someday is a dangerous word. It's a promise we make to ourselves without ever setting a date. It allows us to put our deepest desires on a shelf, gathering dust, while we tend to the urgent but often unimportant tasks of daily life. I was an expert at planning for a life that hadn't happened yet, all while the life I was actually living slipped through my fingers. It's a strange thing, the way we measure our existence. We count birthdays and anniversaries, we mark the passing of seasons, we think of life as a long, continuous line, but life isn't a line, it's a collection of moments. It's a series of present moments, strung together like beads on a necklace. Some are shiny and bright, others are dull and heavy, but each one is a part of the whole. I was so focused on the length of the necklace that I forgot to appreciate the beauty of each individual bead. I was living as if I had an infinite supply, not realizing that each one was precious and unique. I was waiting for the perfect moment to start living, not understanding that the only moment we ever truly have is now. The real measure of a life isn't found in its duration, it's found in its depth. It's in the laughter that makes your stomach hurt. It's in the tears you shed for someone you love. It's in the quiet awe you feel watching a sunrise. It's in the courage it takes to face your fears. It's in the kindness you show to a stranger. These are the things that give a life its weight, its meaning, its texture. These are the moments that make up the life in your years. I had to learn this lesson the hard way. I had to be shaken awake from the dream of a long and predictable life. I had to face the possibility that my road was not as long as I had imagined before I could finally start living on it. Before everything changed, I lived with a comfortable sense of oblivion. I was aware of time, of course. I knew that clocks ticked and calendars turned, but I didn't feel it in my bones. It was an abstract concept, something that happened to everyone else. The future felt like a vast open ocean, and I was sailing on a sturdy ship with no storms in sight. My days were structured and predictable. I had a job, a home, a routine. I was building a life based on security and stability. I thought that if I did all the right things, if I followed the rules, my future would be safe and guaranteed. It was a comfortable illusion, one that many of us live inside without even knowing it. This illusion of endless time makes us procrastinators of our own happiness. We tell ourselves we'll chase our dreams after the next promotion, or once the kids are grown, or when we retire. We put our passions on hold for practical reasons. I was a master of this. My heart yearned for adventure, for the feel of a dusty road under my feet and the sight of landscapes I'd only seen in magazines. But my mind was practical. It told me to be sensible, to save money, to build a career, to wait for the right time. The ticking clock was just background noise, a distant hum I could easily ignore while I focused on the immediate demands of my comfortable, predictable life. I was safe, but I wasn't truly alive. Then slowly the background noise started to get louder. It began as a subtle feeling, a quiet whisper in the back of my mind. I started noticing the passage of time in a more personal way. I saw friends get married, have children, and then watch those children grow up. I saw my parents getting older, their steps a little slower, their hair a little grayer. These were all normal parts of life, but they started to feel different. Each passing year felt less like a celebration and more like a reminder that my own time was not infinite. The vast open ocean of my future started to feel a little smaller, the shoreline a little closer than I had realized. The clock was no longer just ticking, it was counting down. This growing awareness made me restless. I started to question the life I was building. Was this really what I wanted? Was a life of comfort and security worth sacrificing my dreams for? I felt a sense of urgency I had never felt before. It was like waking up in the middle of the night and realizing you've been dreaming your whole life. The value of each day began to sharpen in my mind. I started to see that every sunrise was a gift, not a guarantee. Every moment was a choice. I could choose to keep living in my safe, comfortable box, or I could choose to break free and finally start living the life I had always imagined. The ticking of the clock had become a call to action. The call to action became an unavoidable reality on a cold, grey Tuesday. I was sitting in a sterile doctor's office, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic and unspoken fears. The doctor's words were calm and clinical, but they landed like a physical blow. "The test results are conclusive," he said. "You have the gene for Huntington's disease." In that single moment, the world as I knew it shattered. The distant whisper of the ticking clock became a deafening roar. Huntington's. It was a disease that ran in my family, a ghost that had haunted the edges of my life for as long as I could remember. It's a cruel, relentless illness that slowly erodes your body and your mind. There is no cure. My diagnosis wasn't just a piece of medical information. It was a sentence. It was a map of a future I didn't want, laid out before me in terrifying detail. The doctor spoke of a timeline, of stages, of things I could expect, but all I could hear was the sound of doors closing. The long open road I had once imagined my life to be had suddenly transformed into a short dead-end street. The someday I had been saving all my dreams for might never come. The security I had worked so hard to build was revealed for what it was, a complete illusion. In the face of such a diagnosis, a stable job and a savings account seemed laughably insignificant. The future was no longer an abstract concept. It was a thief, coming to steal my abilities, my memories, and my time. In the days and weeks that followed, I was lost in a fog of grief and anger. I was grieving a future that had been taken from me before I even had a chance to live it. I was angry at the unfairness of it all, at the genetic lottery I had lost. I saw my life branching into two possible paths. One path was to surrender to the diagnosis, to live in fear and wait for the disease to take hold, to let my world shrink until it was nothing more than the four walls of my home. This was the path of despair, the one that the diagnosis seemed to demand. It was the sensible, practical path for someone facing a degenerative illness. It was the path of waiting for the end. But then, a different thought began to emerge from the darkness. It was a flicker of defiance. If my future was uncertain, if my time was limited, then why was I wasting a single moment of the time I had left? The diagnosis had taken my future, but it couldn't take my present. In a strange and painful way, it had given me a gift. It had given me the gift of clarity. It stripped away all the non-essential things and showed me what truly mattered. It was a brutal, terrifying, and ultimately liberating awakening. I realized I had another choice. I could choose the other path. The path of rebellion. The path of living more, not less. The path of cramming as much life as I could into every single day I had left. The decision, once made, felt like the first deep breath I had taken in months. I was not going to wait for tragedy. I was going to live. Not just survive, but truly, deeply live. This realization sparked a fire in me. I looked around at the life I had so carefully constructed, and I saw a cage. A comfortable, well-furnished cage, but a cage nonetheless. My possessions, my job, my routine, they were all anchors holding me in place, keeping me from the adventures I had always dreamed of. If my time was a precious, dwindling resource, I couldn't afford to spend it accumulating things. I needed to spend it accumulating experiences, memories, and connections. So, I made a radical choice. I decided to let it all go. I started selling my possessions one by one. The fancy television, the comfortable sofa, the car I polished every weekend. Each item I sold felt like breaking a link in a chain that had been holding me down. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Friends and family thought I was crazy. They worried I was having a breakdown, that I was running from my diagnosis. They urged me to be practical, to save my money for future medical bills. They didn't understand that I wasn't running from my diagnosis. I was running toward life. I was choosing to invest in my present instead of hoarding resources for a future that was no longer guaranteed. My apartment, once full of things, became emptier and emptier until all that was left was me and a backpack. I quit my job, said my goodbyes, and bought a one-way ticket. I didn't have a solid plan or a detailed itinerary. My only goal was to go, to see, to experience. I wanted to replace the fear of the unknown future with the thrill of an unknown journey. I wanted to trade the comfort of my routine for the discomfort of the road. I knew that adventure wouldn't cure my disease. It wouldn't change my prognosis. But I also knew that it would change me. It would make me feel alive, here and now, in a way that my old safe life never could. Leaving everything behind was the hardest and easiest thing I have ever done. It was an act of surrender and an act of defiance. I was surrendering to the reality of my situation, accepting that I couldn't control the future. But I was also defying the idea that my life was over. I was choosing to write my own story, even if I didn't know how many chapters were left. I was stepping off the map that had been drawn for me and venturing into the unknown. My path was no longer about security or stability. It was about passion, purpose, and the relentless pursuit of life in its most vibrant and immediate form. It was a different kind of path, and it was all my own. As I began my journey, I thought it would be a purely selfish pursuit. Honestly, I was running away from my life, chasing sunsets and mountain peaks to distract myself from the ticking clock in my head. My initial goal was simply to feel alive, to fill my senses with new sights, sounds, and smells. I wanted to escape the shadow of Huntington's and the community of a disease I never asked to be a part of. I traveled through bustling cities and quiet, remote villages. I hiked through jungles and deserts. Along the way, I met countless people, each with their own story. My world, which had felt so small and confined after my diagnosis, began to expand in ways I could never have imagined. But, a strange thing happened along the way. The more I tried to run from my diagnosis, the more it pulled me back. In quiet moments, maybe just sitting in a crowded train station or looking out over a vast ocean, the reality of my situation would resurface. I realized that my journey felt incomplete. It was thrilling, yes, but it lacked a deeper meaning. I was collecting experiences, but I wasn't contributing anything. I was taking from the world, but I wasn't giving anything back. The escape I was seeking started to feel hollow. I understood then that you can't outrun your own story. You have to learn to live with it, to integrate it, to find purpose within it. My journey shifted. It was no longer just about adventure for its own sake. It became a journey with a purpose. I decided to stop running from Huntington's and instead to walk toward it. I started using my travels as a way to raise awareness about the disease. I shared my story with the people I met on the road. I started a blog to document my travels and my experience with Huntington's. I wanted to show people that a diagnosis like this is not the end. It can be a beginning of a different, more intentional way of living. I wanted to connect with others who were affected by this disease, to build a community not based on shared suffering, but on shared strength. This new purpose gave my journey a weight and a direction it had been missing. Every mile I traveled, every person I spoke to, felt meaningful. I was no longer just a tourist. I was an ambassador of hope. I began to seek out families and support groups in the countries I visited. I wanted to understand how this disease, which knew no borders, affected people in different cultures. I wanted to learn from their resilience and share my own. My personal quest for life had transformed into a larger mission to connect, to support, and to shine a light on a disease that so often lives in the shadows. My journey was no longer an escape from my reality. It was a way of facing it head on. My travels brought me to the doorsteps of families whose lives had also been touched by Huntington's. I sat in living rooms in small towns in South America, in apartments in bustling European cities, and in rural homes in Southeast Asia. In each place, I found a different version of my own story. I saw the same fear in their eyes that I had seen in my own. I heard the same questions about the future that I had asked myself. But I also saw something else, something powerful and profound. I saw an unbreakable spirit. I met people who were facing the most devastating challenges with a grace and courage that left me in awe. I remember meeting a woman named Elena in a small village in the Andes. Her husband was in the late stages of Huntington's, and 2 of her 3 adult children had also tested positive. Her life was a constant cycle of caregiving, of physical and emotional exhaustion. Yet, she greeted me with the warmest smile and a cup of hot tea. She spoke not of her burdens, but of her love for her family. She found joy in the small moments, a brief lucid conversation with her husband, a shared laugh with her daughter, the beauty of the mountains outside her window. She showed me that strength isn't about the absence of pain, but about finding light in the midst of it. In another country, I met a young man named Marco. He was my age, and like me, he had recently been diagnosed. He was a talented musician, his hands capable of creating beautiful melodies on his guitar. He was terrified of the day when the disease would steal his ability to play, but he wasn't letting that fear stop him. He was performing every chance he could get, pouring all of his passion and his pain into his music. He was recording his songs, creating a legacy that would live on long after he was gone. He told me, "My hands may fail me one day, but my music will not." He taught me that purpose can be found in creating something beautiful out of something broken. These experiences were more impactful than any mountain I climbed or any ocean I crossed. They were raw, real, and deeply human. I met parents caring for their children and children caring for their parents. I saw communities that rallied around affected families, offering support without judgment. I learned that while Huntington's disease attacks the body and mind, it cannot touch the core of the human spirit. In every story, in every family, I found a testament to the power of love and the resilience of the human heart. These people were not just surviving, they were living, loving and fighting with every ounce of their being. They were my teachers, and they showed me the true meaning of living life to the fullest. Through these encounters, I saw resilience in its purest form. It wasn't the kind of resilience you read about in books, which often sounds like a superpower. It was a quieter, more stubborn kind of strength. It was the choice to get out of bed each morning, even when the future felt impossibly heavy. It was the ability to find moments of laughter and joy, even when surrounded by sadness. It was the commitment to care for a loved one, day after day, without any promise of a happy ending. Resilience, I learned, is not about being unbreakable. It is about the courage to keep putting yourself back together, piece by piece, every single day. It is an act of relentless hope. Hope was a word I had struggled with after my diagnosis. It felt naive, almost foolish to hope in the face of a disease with no cure. But the families I met taught me that hope is not about wishing for a different reality. It's about finding meaning and purpose within the reality you have. It is the hope that you can still experience love, the hope that you can still make a difference, the hope that today can be a good day. It is a small, steady flame that you protect with your hands against the wind. Elena, the woman in the Andes, hoped for a moment of connection with her husband. Marco, the musician, hoped his music would touch someone's heart. Their hope was active, not passive. It was a choice they made every day. The connections I made on my journey became my lifeline. Before, I had felt completely alone in my diagnosis. It was a secret I carried, a burden that isolated me from the normal world. But by sharing my story and listening to the stories of others, I found a community. We were connected by a shared vulnerability, a shared struggle, but we were also connected by a shared strength. We understood each other's fears without needing to speak them. We could celebrate the small victories that others might not notice. This connection was a powerful antidote to despair. It reminded me that I was not alone on this difficult path. We were walking it together, even if we were miles apart. This journey taught me that the human heart is far more resilient than we can ever imagine. It can be broken, shattered, and stretched to its limits, but it can also heal. It can find ways to love more deeply, to hope more fiercely, and to connect more authentically. The resilience I witnessed was not about ignoring the pain or pretending it didn't exist. It was about holding the pain and the joy at the same time. It was about acknowledging the darkness while always looking for the light. These families, these individuals, they were not defined by their disease. They were defined by their love, their courage, and their incredible enduring resilience. Before my diagnosis, I craved certainty. I wanted a life that was predictable and secure. I found comfort in routines and long-term plans. The idea of uncertainty terrified me. But my journey into the unknown, both geographically and emotionally, completely changed my relationship with it. By leaving my old life behind, I had intentionally stepped into a world of uncertainty. I didn't know where I would sleep each night. I didn't know who I would meet. I didn't know what challenges I would face. This constant state of not knowing should have been stressful, but instead, it was liberating. It forced me to be present in a way I had never been before. When you don't have a plan, you have to pay attention. You have to be open to whatever comes your way. You have to trust your instincts. Every day was a new adventure, a blank page waiting to be written. This discomfort, this lack of control, made me feel incredibly alive. My senses were heightened. The taste of a new food, the sound of a foreign language, the sight of a stunning landscape. It all felt more vibrant, more real. I was no longer living on autopilot. I was fully engaged with the world around me. I was living in the present moment because the present moment was all I had. The future was a question mark, and the past was a story. The only thing that was real was now. This experience of embracing uncertainty on the road prepared me to face the ultimate uncertainty of my disease. Huntington's is a disease of unknowns. I don't know when my symptoms will begin. I don't know how quickly they will progress. I don't know what my final years will look like. This uncertainty could be a source of constant anxiety, a dark cloud over every moment. But my travels taught me to see it differently. I learned that none of us truly knows what the future holds. We all live with uncertainty, whether we have a diagnosis or not. We just have different ways of pretending we don't. My diagnosis just stripped away the pretense. Facing this discomfort head-on gave me a strange kind of freedom. Because I could not control the future, I was free to let go of it. I was free from the pressure of planning for a long life. I was free to focus all my energy on living this day, this moment, as fully as possible. Adventure became my way of practicing this freedom. Whether it was hiking a challenging trail, trying a food that scared me, or starting a conversation with a stranger, each act of stepping outside my comfort zone was a declaration. It was me saying that I choose to live with courage, not fear. I choose to embrace the unknown, not hide from it. In uncertainty, I found my presence. My journey across the world eventually led me back home, but I was not the same person who had left. I came back with fewer possessions, but with a wealth of experiences. I came back with an uncertain future, but with a profound appreciation for the present. The greatest insight I gained was not found on a mountaintop or in a faraway city. It was something much simpler, something that was with me all along. I learned that life's greatest gift is not a long and healthy future. The greatest gift we are ever given is today. This very moment, this breath. It is the only thing that is truly ours. You do not need a life-changing diagnosis to understand this truth. You do not need to sell all your possessions and travel the world. You only need to wake up. Wake up to the life you are living right now. We are all on a journey with an unknown end. We are all living with uncertainty. Don't wait for a tragedy to start living the life you want. Don't save your adventures for someday. That day may never come. The time to live is now. The time to love is now. The time to be brave is now. Find what makes you feel alive and do more of that. It doesn't have to be a grand adventure. It can be a small one. Adventure is a mindset. It is the choice to step outside your routine. It is learning something new. It is talking to a stranger. It is taking a different route home from work. It is being curious about the world and the people in it. It is about choosing to be present and engaged in your own life. Meaning is not something you find at the end of a long search. It is something you create moment by moment. You create it through kindness. You create it through connection. You create it by sharing your gifts with the world. You create it by living your truth, whatever that may be. My future with Huntington's is still a question mark, but I am no longer afraid of it. My journey taught me that a life is not measured by its length, but by its depth. It is measured in moments of connection, in acts of courage, in bursts of laughter, and in shed tears. I don't know how many years I have left, but I know that I will fill them with as much life as I can. I encourage you to do the same. Don't wait. Your greatest adventure is waiting for you. It begins right now, in this precious, fleeting, and beautiful present moment. Embrace it, cherish it, live it. It is the greatest gift you will ever receive.